As a quick introduction, my name is Brian D'Souza. I am a senior product marketing manager with the Azure Data and AI team here at Microsoft. And one of the reasons why I reached out to the career management folks, and thanks again for a fabulous setup, all of you. But one of the reasons I reached out is because a big trend that we're seeing right now here at Microsoft and even in different big tech firms is the definition and the career progression of what one would call a product manager or a product marketing manager. I have seen a few hires recently where there is a bit of a confusion about what are some of the needs and desires and skills required for a product manager. And sometimes people fall into that role well enough, sometimes they don't. And more often than not, I've been asked questions by prospects around, hey, what's a day in the life of a product manager, and how can I develop the right skill sets to be a product manager, and what is it that I need to do and not do, what is expected of me and what's not, and how do I make sure that when I call myself a product manager that I know what I'm talking about. So many such questions have been coming up across schools. So it's not just one specific school here or there that we recruit at that have these questions. And there has been a growing sense of urgency and need where when people join our teams, the ramp up is a lot stronger, a lot higher. And the learning curve is a lot steeper even for that matter, because a lot of people don't know what life in product management really means sometimes. So so the goal of this session is really just to provide some highly brief details on what Microsoft and also big tech look at when they look at product management and product marketing. And my hope and goal of this session is also that you can take away something from this to apply to yourself, apply to your own career. See, first of all, if this is a career that you're interested in. Not follow buzzwords and trends out there and fall into a trap, so to speak. And if you have any clarifying questions that I can answer here or later, however possible. So with that, just want to also caveat that this is definitely not a deep dive into product management. It takes many weeks to get into some sort of an expertise on that. But at least this will help you point in the right direction to see if, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about when I wanted to be a product manager, or, oh, geez, no, that's not at all what I was thinking about, and maybe I need to do more research, right? So the concept of product development per se and product management is definitely not siloed in one specific team. So you will not see companies which have, oh, that is our product development team, and everything with regards to the product, right from ideation all the way to launch, happens in that one team. You will not see that in big tech for sure. It is a collaboration. It is a giant network of people and competing priorities sometimes that needs to come together to build out a product. Now, what is the definition of a product here? Because I work at Microsoft and in tech, so to speak, the definition of product here that I would apply is an online product or a software or a hardware. And so when you think of the various types of teams that would go into producing your iPhone, for example, or producing an app, it's pretty mind-boggling to see how many people and how many teams get involved here. So off the bat, collaboration and being able to juggle priorities, think on your feet. These are some of the intrinsic attributes that one would find in a product manager. Now, more and more, these attributes are being applied to any and all roles out there. But the reason I highlight it here is because you will not succeed if any one of these blocks that you see on the screen right now fail or are not in line or aligned with the goals of your product and what you set out. then this product will fail for sure. So the stakes are a lot higher when it comes to driving alignment in some way and form. Now, the reason I have a few boxes there with dots is because, again, this is definitely not the all end all list of teams that you would work with. Different companies have different teams. A lot of these teams that you see on the screen, again, are organizations, and they have sub teams within that you'd be working with and on. So going in with the mindset that I am going to work with a lot of different people, I'm going to work with a lot of people who may not find my priorities as their priorities, and how do you influence and how do you manage that is something that you have to start doing day one. If you love living on an island and not having to work with any human being whatsoever, probably drop off the call right now. So, because you're not going to like what's going to come after this. So yeah, so another piece of information here that's important is that sometimes folks say, like, who are the most critical people that you need to work with to launch a product or to build a product? And some people might say, yeah, it's operations. Some people say it's engineering. Some people say, well, if market research is bad, the product fails. All of this is true. But what that also means is that all of these teams are a priority. So, unfortunately, we don't live in a world where we can work with everyone all of the time, every time, and keep everyone happy. So being able to manage relationships and understand the priorities of the teams you work with before you slap on your priorities on them is something that is not taught in most textbooks, but you'll start seeing that your success is very, very much dependent on these teams understanding whether you know what their priorities are and you are there to help them succeed as well, just as much as they are there to help you and your product succeed. Right? So when it comes to product managers and product marketing managers, a lot of people say, well, aren't they the same thing, or are they different, or whatnot? The fact of the matter is, and I'll go a little bit deeper in this a little later in the presentation, but the fact of the matter here is that, yes, in some companies, product managers are both business as well as technical. In some, they are primarily on the marketing side. Some, they are primarily on the engineering side. In the context of this space here, what I'm talking to is product managers sit primarily in the engineering side, and product marketing managers sit primarily in the marketing side, as the name suggests. But let me also caveat by saying that when you see product manager, don't think that, oh, that's an engineering org, or that's basically where I'm going to work. That's not the case. You will find product managers sitting both in engineering as well as marketing, depending on the company that you're applying to or that you would eventually work with. So the all end all, though, what you need to take away from this is that a product manager is always focused on the product. The solution for the customers, understanding what features go into it, the design, the construct, the architecture. The product manager is all about the product. But what the product manager also does is makes sure that the timelines of when the product is going to be ready for launch is important. Now, the reason why I stress ready for launch is because the launch in itself is what the product marketing manager owns, meaning when is the right time to launch? When is the right time to go to market? So the product marketing manager here is focused on the customers. It is not a sales-oriented job, but a lot of the planning and the strategy that a product marketing manager churns out ends up being sales strategies, sales approaches, customer outreach programs, things like that, because the timing of what you launch when is a big factor of making sure that the market is ready for your product, right? So whenever you think of product managers and product marketing managers, number one, don't think that one is always in engineering and the other one is primarily marketing. It depends on the company that you're applying to, but the by and large of it is the product manager focuses on the product, while the product marketing manager focuses on the customers.
Hey, Brian, quick question on that piece.
Sure.
How involved are the product managers and the product marketing managers together? I know you'll probably dive into it a little more, but they're separate positions, but they have to be so well in tune with each other, I would think. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. That's a great segue, Matt, and I didn't pay you to ask me that question for sure. But yeah, there is that you're basically tied to the hip for all intents and purposes. So the product manager, as I said, focuses on the product, and I'll walk through some of these pieces that he's responsible for, and a product marketing manager and what he or she is responsible for. But where these two roles and people culminate is in setting the product vision, all right? So the product vision is a function of what you're going to build, for whom you're going to build it, and when you're going to launch it. And so this is a very strong equation where you will look at the product manager, and the product manager will look at the product marketing manager before they send anything out the door. Case in point, in my life, on an average day, I meet with my product manager maybe half or a little or three quarters of that day, every single day of the week. And the reason for this is not that we talk about the same thing over and over again, but whenever we address a certain issue, for example, we need to get legal sign off on a name that we're going to slap onto this product. Well, that's something that we both would need to discuss, because if I say, okay, yeah, this is the right name that we can, because it resonates with the market that we're aligning to, he would then have to say, well, okay, that name makes sense, but then what do we call these different resources, or these different server groups under it? Because that's how the product is going to get constructed. And so we need to make sure that all these names align with the right naming conventions for the feature sets that we'll be building out for forthcoming versions. And then I would think like, wait, so I was kind of thinking maybe the name would stand just as a good launch, a good name for a launch. But if we're thinking phase 2 and phase 3, I would want to have different names because they're going to have different value props. And then he would say, well, then we can't have the same name. And then I'd be like, okay, sorry, legal, we can't have this name. We got to go back to the drawing board and figure this out. This literally happened last week, actually. So at the end of the day, yes, the alignment and the tying to the hip of each other is so strong that it's almost like a work marriage that you have, where you meet each other so much that you guys need to always be aligned with what's going on, aligned with priorities, and know what's going to happen next. And most importantly, the content of the slide in front of you, most importantly, understanding what the other person is responsible for. So from an, does that help answer your question, Matt? All right. So from a product engineering standpoint, some of the responsibilities for the product manager is what is the roadmap? What is the feature set? Making sure that whatever that roadmap is and whatever features we have decided that we want to launch is something well communicated to engineering teams so that they know what to build. Being able to do A/B testing, being able to do experimentation with control groups and dog fooding groups and so on. For writing functional specs is a big part of a product manager's job. Again, you don't have to think about it as a software development project, but more from a, what do you want this feature to do? How does this feature react? What are the different states of this feature, depending on what state the customer is going to be in? Being well-versed with the Agile framework, because that's how the software development lifecycle, SDLC, is structured today in most big tech firms, where everything is based on Agile. So when it comes to understanding why a product is getting built, that is something that the product manager works with the product marketing manager very closely on. But the decision on what gets built and in what style and what framework it gets built, that is something that the product manager works with his engineering counterparts on. So understanding what the metrics are is a super important piece of the product manager, because it's always a touchy subject when you're building a product, because that's basically how someone would say whether a product is a success or a failure. So being able to negotiate what are the right metrics with your engineering team is a big part of a product manager's job. A few others, like figuring out what the planning cycle is. For example, some products have a shorter planning cycle than others. Microsoft Teams, for example, it has a shorter planning cycle than Azure AI. The reason being is because the Teams market is a consumer-based market. You have a lot of folks out there, startups and whatnot, who are using Slack, and Slack is a competitor to Teams. So how do we churn out features at a faster scale so the cycle is faster? But when you think of AI, when you think of machine learning and these new emerging technologies, you don't want to just churn out things that is half-baked, or customers are trying to understand and make sense of it a little bit more. You want to be able to have longer planning cycles so you can have fully baked products going out and getting feedback on that, and then coming back, going back to the drawing board and seeing what is it that you need to develop next. So the product manager focuses on the product development lifecycle, and he drives usability plans, and again, metrics from understanding what is the right metrics to track whether a product is doing well for a user, or where are some of the hot points, where are some of the bottlenecks, and so on and so forth. So very, very product focused. Flipping on the marketing side for a product marketing manager, the outside in is a very big component. So understanding your customer is step one. Knowing who your customer is from the point of view of even seasonality, like my customer likes X, Y, and Z during the summer timeframe, but during winter, they switch off on this, and it doesn't make sense putting money into that. So even understanding seasonalities of customers is super important, and that's the definition of what a customer is for that product marketing manager. A product marketing manager focuses on product differentiation, which also means understanding what are competitor products. How is our product different from our competitors? I'll give you another example. The other day, I was in a meeting with our compete leads. We have a compete lead for every product. And one of the big topics of discussion was, how do we look at Microsoft AI and Azure AI, and how do we communicate the right differentiation? And so one of the things I had to push back on is, well, let's not start saying we are better than someone else right now. People are still trying to figure out what in the world is AI in the first place. So for us, in this case, is less about saying we are better than a different product, and it's more about thought leadership and saying Microsoft defines AI as follows. This is how we want to shape AI going forward, so that when a customer looks at that, they're like, if this company is trying to educate me on AI, what does that mean? It means that they know what they're doing, or they understand the space better than I. So what is the likelihood of that the next time I come out with a product, that this customer will come to me because they're like, hey, you taught me about AI, so I will give your product a shot and see if that fits my bill. So sometimes you need to make those hard calls, whether it's not about product differentiation, it's about thought leadership, and then how do you segment and message and frame up the market that way. So again, a big part of a product marketing manager's job is to understand the maturity of the product, the maturity of the space, and know when to educate versus differentiate. It's responsible for positioning and messaging. The market research, a lot of times in what happens in big companies and mid-sized companies alike is, a team will build a product, and then they will go out and do the research to fit the product. And what that means is like, hey, this is why we have built this, is because they said that we had to build this. And it happens a lot, and again, the product marketing manager is the one that needs to kind of hold people accountable, especially engineering teams, hold them accountable to be like, hey, you can't just build something and then say, this is the research that showed it, but let's start with the research. Let's understand what the research needs to be. What is the framework for that research? So before anyone goes into market research, usually the product marketing manager needs to set out the research agenda, write up the framework, write up the parameters, and then launch research, and then synthesize the research results from there. And as I was saying, a lot of this information goes back into like, okay, great, positioning is fine, messaging is fine, customers know what we are selling, blah, blah, blah. But how do our sales teams go and sell this? And so figuring out then, for a product manager, the job is usually done when the product ships out the door. The product marketing manager, his or her job is not done then. It's more the nurture that comes even after that. That's the product marketing manager's job, which is, okay, now that we've launched, now that we've gone to market, sales, let's cook up the strategy of how you're going to sell this. And so figuring out, what is the competencies that you need to build into your sales strategy, which means basically how mature is your customer and knowing what you're telling them. is super important. Another case in point, there was one of our partners, or a company of our partners that we were working with, and the sales strategy or the sales approach did not match the maturity of the customer. So it was kind of telling a customer that you need to buy oranges, and the customer was like, but I thought we were talking about vegetables, so there's this mismatch that happens. And so making sure that the sales strategy is super aligned with your customer's maturity, and that is something the sales team will depend on the product marketing manager. If a salesperson walks into a customer meeting, follows your sales play, follows your field playbook to the T, and the customer looks at him like deer in the headlights, like, what are you talking about? It's not on the salesperson, it's on the product marketing manager. So it's super important for that alignment to be driven, and that means making sure that the sales teams have the right strategy to go sell. Well, going back into GTM and sales and partner readiness to wrap this one up here, the readiness approach to knowing what is the go-to-market strategy with sales and with partner teams is super important, again, because when a product launches, it's very rare, and neither does a product marketing manager want that everyone come back to the product marketing manager be like, hey, I have X, Y, and Z type of customer. What do I do with this? You have to figure out, and even though it's probably never going to happen where you have figured out every scenario out there, but at every single standing point, you have to figure out what are the most likely use cases that your product is going to get used. Figuring out what those use cases are and then sending that out with your GTM plan to your sales and partner folks is super important, because now you have just activated your scale motion, where everyone starts talking about your product the right way, starts selling your product the right way, and starts achieving your metrics down the line. A bad GTM strategy is usually one which doesn't have the right metrics involved with knowing whether GTM is going well or not. And one which is not easily comprehensible from the point of view of the customer. Again, you are not building a GTM plan for, or I'm not building a GTM plan for Microsoft or Microsoft sellers. I'm building a GTM plan for our customers based on which our Microsoft sellers are going to go and deliver our product. So that's super, super critical to know. And then rounding up back to Matt's earlier question about, how do you work together? Everything that I just mentioned here is by no means chronological in any sense, by no means mutually exclusive in any sense. A lot of this here is done in discussion while you're even ideating on what the product is going to be like. Because for both the product manager and the product marketing manager, we have to look at the world a year from now and say, what is our product going to look like? There's a very unique practice that we have here that I think is super, super useful, is that whenever we start whenever we get into planning of like, okay, what is our product going to look like for next year? We always start by writing the press release at that launch. So I will start by writing out the press release like, X, Y, and Z product just launched today by Microsoft. This product does X, Y, and Z. Customers have been wanting. So when you start getting into that press release format, you already start hashing out a bunch of these topics here. So when you write up the press release, and I get with my product manager, be like, hey, this is what I see as our product looking like and delivering that kind of a message when we launch. Then the product manager be like, yeah, that makes sense, or that doesn't make sense, or hey, you are over promising the world here. We're not going to be able to get all of that in this one, maybe next time. So that's why the product vision is a function of all that you see here and more, and done from a kind of like a crystal ball. We all try to figure out what the future is looking like, and then we spend the next year doing whatever we can to keep that variation as close to the to reality as possible. So yeah, so if anyone asks you like, hey, but where does the product vision sit? It is a combination of what the product manager and the product marketing manager comes together on. Cool. And yeah, folks, please feel free to ask questions along the way. So you don't have to wait till the end, or you can, it's up to you.
Yeah, I was going to jump in there real quick and just say, if anybody does have any questions, feel free to take yourself off mute and ask Brian, or you can throw it in the chat and I can read it to Brian too. So thanks. Go ahead, Brian.
Cool. So when it comes to, okay, Brian, we've understood kind of what the product manager does, what the product marketing manager does, and so on. So how do I know what does it take for me to be a product manager or a product marketing manager? Um, and I should probably stop saying product manager or product marketing manager. I'll say it's an and or, because again, depending on the company, whatever I just said could be a product manager also, but you could also be a product marketing manager if that connotation is very different from engineering in a company that you're applying to. But it's important to have a sense of what skills are important um, depending on what kind of role you are going to go for. And the way I've created this diagram is to show that nothing is like this is all product manager, or this is, well, some of it is, but not everything is all product manager or all marketing manager. It's some of these kind of cut across, and some have more of a responsibility on the product manager versus more on the product marketing manager. But the number one thing here, by far, the number one thing for both product manager, product marketing, any connotation anywhere in tech, is being easy with technology. What that means is, do you understand technology? Like, you don't have to know coding. You don't have to know, JSON files or JavaScript or Java. You don't have to know all that. But when someone talks to you like, hey, let me draw out how this app works, and you can understand what that person says, that's being easy with technology. Now, I know that's a very subjective way of defining it, but think about, where does your mind go to when you look at an app, or where does your mind go to when you see a release of a new iPhone, or you end up on TechCrunch and you're reading through how product is being built and things like that. So this is something very intrinsic, because I don't, as much as I think you can learn almost anything and everything, having this ease with technology is what's so important, because in one way or the other you end up in rooms with meetings with engineers, and they will they will understand that you're not a coder and everything, but at some point they will be like, yeah, so we are going to connect this API to this database, and from there we will have another telemetry offshoot to the portal, and that's basically what the user will see. And when they click on it, they'll understand that it's all been hyperscale, so then they don't need to worry about it. So, okay, what does that mean? And so none of that is coding language, but it's technology. So having that affinity with technology is so important, because I'm yet to come across someone who says, oh, I hate technology, but I work at Microsoft. It's like saying you hate roller coasters and you work at Disneyland. It's like, which I think you still can, but maybe. Anyways, long story short, though, being easy with having that ease with technology, and having the yearning to kind of like tinker around and understand what it takes to for amazing technology to get rolled out is super important. I will touch on a few others here. Some of these are pretty self-explanatory, but the other one I'll talk about is UX design. It is super. Some people have always thought about UX design as like that's a big engineering thing. That's wrong, right? Many times I have been in meetings where there has been a UX review, where they're like, hey, this is the customer journey. This is how a customer is going to go through this purchase experience. This is how they're going to use the product. This is super important, even from a marketing standpoint, because the product manager has said, okay, this is what can be done from a technical standpoint. For a product marketing manager, it's important that, well, this is not what the customer is going to look at, or this is not how they behave, or this doesn't make sense because the value prop is not coming across clearly. These are pieces that the product marketing manager is responsible for calling out. So the UX design, again, you don't need to get too technical with it, but you need to understand what is good customer journey. What is a good flow like? How is a systemic flow looking like when it comes to a customer flow? And so working with your product manager becomes super important there. And that's probably some of the most conflicting conversations with your product manager, because if I had $1 for every time I've been told like, but that's how we can build it. I'm like, that doesn't make sense though. It's, there's a lot of pushing back that needs to happen, that you cannot sign off something that looks really crappy. So you having that sense of what is good design is also important, both from a product manager as well as a product marketing manager standpoint. Another couple of others here, which I'll highlight, is what is a product strategy in BI? Now, you would have seen that I talked about product vision in the previous slide. And again, same concept here. Product strategy is super important. Both have to be aligned, both contribute to it. But from a BI standpoint, metrics, and BI is business intelligence, but coming up with the right metrics and understanding how to measure something is a super important skill, I think, for anything in life. What gets measured gets done, so to speak. So being able to say that, okay, there have been plenty of times at Microsoft here itself, and I've seen with other friends in Google, and actually some in Facebook even, where the product development stage is so fast that the product gets built out, gets launched, and then people put metrics to it, which is super hard, because how are you going to apply telemetry endpoints into your product once it's already out the door? So for the most part, it's super important for that BI mindset to understand, well, I'm saying I want the customer to do X, but how am I going to track that? If customer does not do X and does Y instead, how do I track that once the product is out the door? So having that kind of a mindset to see, like, where can you quantify your positioning, or quantify your messaging, or quantify your experience, that's something that gets done way in advance, and being able to speak that language again is super important. The second big piece here is use case scenarios. So everything in tech is use case scenarios. And what that means is, how do you document and articulate what is your customer doing, or what can that customer do with your product? This is something that's used and developed early on in the process with your product manager, but also after your product is out the door, understanding which use cases are doing better than others is super important. Because when you start looking at phases 2 and 3 and 4 of your product, you start needing to prioritize which ones get done and which ones don't. And so, from a point of view of understanding where do these use cases intersect, and how do you write very clear use cases that can be understood by engineering, is a skill that you're going to need to develop. And again, a lot of times marketing gets this flack for being too fluffy and whatnot. But one of the reasons why I love product marketing and why I'm a product marketing manager is because this is probably the only role, other than research, I would think of, that gets so tactical and so tangible that any misstep here or there will show up in a metric, and that'll be on you. So it's very important for you to understand, how do you bring a product together from the point of view of these kind of skills, because you will be at least looked to understand what these skills are. And everyone has strengths and weaknesses. So sometimes you will have strengths in certain areas and weaknesses in others, but being able to upskill and learn on the go is a super important trait that any company will expect from you. Okay. And again, I have like dotted bars down there, and the reason being is because these are, again, just a subset of what's out there. A lot of this depends on the company, depends on how you see yourself as well, or what kind of a reputation you want to have as a product marketing manager. But the bare minimum is what I've mentioned up here, which is super important for you to understand if you're getting into product marketing. Cool. So big statement here. You do not need to know coding. I get asked this every single time I'm at a job fair, or I'm mentoring someone, or someone reached out. You do not need to know coding for product marketing or product management. None, zero, zilch. That's a complete lie if someone tells you you need to know coding. Do you know coding? Sure, that's fantastic. That's very helpful. Do you have a computer science degree? Even good, like that's totally fine. But there are very successful product managers in Microsoft, Google, Facebook, friends of mine who I know who are like liberal arts majors, or MBAs, or international management majors, being amazing product managers. And the reason why they can do that is primarily for two reasons. One, I will repeat again, being easy with technology, understanding technology and having a passion for it. And the second most important thing is a lot of engineering companies, tech companies have started to realize that we cannot just fill our product management teams with engineers all around. A lot of companies are bringing a lot of these diverse folks with diverse backgrounds into engineering so that they can bring that outside in perspective. So it's almost frowned upon when someone says, "Oh, you don't know coding, so you won't be a product manager." That doesn't happen. Um, it's a huge myth that's keeping amazingly smart people out there away from these roles because they think that they don't have a comp sci degree, and that's not the case. So I just wanted to reiterate this point.
Thanks, Brian. And hey, real quick, and Remen, thanks for raising your hand. It sounds like we have a question. If you want to go ahead and take yourself off mute, Remen, and ask it to Brian here.
Hi, Brian. This is Raymond from WP Carry. And I just wanted to ask, so I've interviewed or had informational interviews with product managers recently. And one question that frequently came up was about road mapping. And I saw that on your slide up there. So for me, I never had this experience before. So what would your recommendation be when it comes to addressing this question, or I guess in terms of preparing for that in the future? Are there any resources out there that you recommend we look at?
Yeah, I have a few resources later on, but what road mapping basically means is, so let me take a step back. So engineering teams, no matter who you are, what you are, you might be a Microsoft or a Google, but you will always run into limited resources, always, right? Engineering teams will in the past, like maybe 5 years ago, you would submit this laundry list or this wish list of features that you want your engineers to do, throw it over the fence, and maybe you'll get one or two back from there. And that wasn't a very efficient way of developing products. So when you get asked questions about road mapping, one of the clear signs that you need to show is that, do you understand what a roadmap means from a point of view of a tech company? And there are like two or three that I can think of the top of my head right now. Is number one, first of all, having the knowledge and understanding that resources are finite. So whatever you get your engineering teams to do today is going to be super more valuable than what you're going to get them to do like in phase 3 or phase 4. So what that means is, when you launch a product, they usually ask you, so for your phase 1, what's your MVP? And an MVP is defined as a most viable product. And what that means is, like, for the customer's problem that we have initially designed on why we even got down this path of building this product, does your MVP at the bare minimum solve for those problems? All right. So your features in your phase 1 of your roadmap needs to be features that solves for that MVP. And now you have to then define your MVP. You have to say why those features appeal to those MVP, so that the goal of your phase 1 is to get it out the door. And for the bare minimum goals of what you have for your customer problem you're trying to solve, get solved with your phase 1. Now, engineering teams very rarely tell you, oh, just give me your phase 1. When we are ready for phase 2 next month, let's talk about it again then. They don't work like that. Engineering teams, I have seen, they operate on a 6-month planning cycle, okay? So what that means is that even if you are planning to launch a product next month, you need to develop a plan of feature sets for phase 2 and phase 3 for those 6 months and submit that today, okay? And what that then includes is your feature sets, your customer personas on why you're developing those feature sets and for which customers, the timeline of your feature sets and why those are the right timelines based on your launch schedule. And then finally, the metrics, like, so on what basis are you applying metrics for each one of these phases? So the reason why roadmap is such an important point, especially engineering teams will ask you this more when you get into interview loops with them, is because they want to see that, does this person understand that how engineering teams work, how engineering organizations work, that it's not like, hey, give me your feature sets and I'll churn it out for you next week and then I'll wait for you twiddling my thumbs for the next feature set. They're working on a ton of things. So they want to know whether you can think ahead and tell them with a certain amount of certainty that these are the features I want to get built in the next 3 months. These are the features I want to get built in the 3 months to 6 months. These are from 6 months to 9 months. And what is the P0s, P1s, and P2s? And what that means is, okay, your P0 is like, I absolutely need this. There is no phase 2 without this P0. P1s are, they'd be nice to have. I'd love them to have. P2s are more like, hey, if you can't get us done this cycle, we'll push it to the next cycle, but it still needs to be done. So having that knowledge of how do you communicate to engineering teams is that roadmap. That roadmap is your tool of communication. So they want to see if you can be that forward thinker, if you can cover them in the sense of saying that tomorrow when someone tells the engineering team that, hey, why aren't you working on this? They will look at you. They'll be like, well, Brian told me that this is what he needs done this time. And then they say, Brian, why did you say this and not that? And then you need to have a reason. Well, this is why, because this is the seasonality of the customer. This is when the product needs to go out. This is when it's aligned with this big conference you're going to launch or whatever that is. So being able to develop that roadmap and cover your engineering team so that they can just go focus on developing is a big part of your success as well as the engineering team's success. So you can always expect that question for the most part when you interview with big tech. Does that help?
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. That was very helpful.
Sure. So I wanted to touch upon this a little bit. And again, this is not going to do the entire conversation justice, but unfortunately, or just the way it is that companies define product managers and product marketing managers differently sometimes. Under a product manager, which I again think of more like the engineering person sitting in engineering, no coding necessary, right? You will also see program managers, those kind of roles, and you will see product manager technical. That's what they call them, product manager technical. Under product marketing managers, you will see product marketing managers, but you will also see product manager non-technical as a title, or you will see technical product manager. Now, this is a little confusing. You would think, well, Brian, doesn't a technical product manager sit with the product manager and product manager technical? That's not the case always. For example, they are called TPMs. And what a TPM is, at least in Microsoft, is this person is responsible for developing all the content that's the how-tos. So how does the product function? How does the product interact with customers? Where are the endpoints? Now, the reason why this person usually sits on the marketing side is because they are responsible to go out and do webinars, do hands-on labs, do educational series, which requires a technical mindset to go and walk through the product in itself. A product manager and his team does not do this usually because they are focused on product. They don't, for the most part, they don't go out to customers and speak to customers. They just focus on the product. So that's why a technical product manager is an engineering style person who goes out and meets customers and helps them understand the solution. Now, the reason why I say it's confusingly simple is because different companies tie into different types of these roles, okay? It is going to take some research and some homework for you to go through the job descriptions of these companies and what they call what, and then maybe correlate it to a couple of slides ago when I told you what a product manager does and what a product marketing manager does. You can use that as your glossary to say, oh, I can see what a product manager does at Google. That is something that I can do because that's what they're asking for. And this is the kind of skills that would be required for that. So it takes a little bit of time to understand how these companies work with these roles. But job descriptions are a best way for you to correlate to it. And sometimes if you can't do that, then feel free to use the slide I used a couple of slides ago, because those are a lot of the buzzwords that we use in job descriptions highlighting engineering product managers or marketing style product managers or product marketing managers. All right. So in terms of, so how do you get the job, whether you're going for a product manager job or a product marketing manager job or a combination of both, depending on the company you're in. I usually follow this approach that I've told most people is you need to be able to learn, prepare, target, and then apply. Do not start by applying. That's not going to help, not one bit. And it comes across very clearly either in the application or in the interview process. So I'll touch upon each one of these things individually. So with regards to learn, as I just mentioned, research job descriptions. Take a look at what type product management and type product marketing in Microsoft's career portal, Google's career portal, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Hulu, whatnot. All these tech companies have product managers and product marketing managers, or some variation of them, depending on what we just discussed. So research them and see which ones, first of all, which company are you looking to get into? Like what's interesting to you? Then from there, you can see a ton of material online. Anytime you type product manager, product marketing manager, it'll tell you the differences. And every site tells you some variation of what's different from the other. It's not that complicated. You do not need to get into analysis paralysis and be like, I don't know what's going on here. It's very simple based on how I just mentioned it to you. There is a very, very strong connotation between product managers to product and product marketing to customers, AKA market, segment, whatnot. So definitely do a lot of reading online and see what's out there from the point of view of how people describe those two things. And then discover your gaps. I've honestly seen so many really cool candidates come through our pipeline who have just been upfront, have been saying like, hey, these are the things I'm strong in, but these are the things that I'm weak in. And sometimes just understanding what your gaps are is a great way for you to fill those gaps, or to at least portray that you're willing to fill those gaps. None of these companies ever expect you to hit every single line item bullet on the job description. As a matter of fact, I will go off to even say that if you're applying to a job and you have done every single thing in that bullet of that job description, then you are not growing. You are not challenging yourself to do something new or grow in your career. You're probably going to just do a lateral jump and do the same thing you've been doing before and be like, oh, cool, now I'm doing the same thing again. So definitely don't feel discouraged when you see a few bullets in that job description that you don't have experience in or you don't have skills in. And that's totally fine. Make sure that you understand what your gaps are and find ways in how you can plug those gaps. You do not need to plug those gaps before you apply. You just need to be understanding of that so that for a recruiter or for an interviewer, we don't have to then say, well, you don't have the skill. You can just come out the door and be like, I don't have the skill. I get it. This is something I want to learn, but here are the areas that I'm really, really strong in and how I can differentiate myself from the others in. The final bullet here is network. You will learn tremendously through networking. I have got all my internships, all my jobs through LinkedIn, literally all of them. And there's not one I haven't. I've been able to meet people who I wouldn't have met in my own circles. And I have identified, I'll give you a very simple example. When I was coming out of Thunderbird, one of the courses that I loved and I did well in by God's grace was corporate strategy, Andrew Ingpen's course. The guy is phenomenal, all right? He is amazing. And I came out of that course being like, this is what I want to do. I want to do corporate strategy. Like this is what my life's calling. And I networked, I did some homework. When I joined Microsoft, even as a product manager, I said like, yeah, I want to do corporate strategy at some point. And I met people in corporate strategy, and no disrespect to corporate strategists, but a lot of corporate strategy is writing white papers. You write strategy docs, you write thought docs and all this, and then you throw it into the ether and hopefully someone catches it. Hopefully a product manager catches it and be like, yeah, that's something there. Maybe we can build something on that. So I realized something in myself that, yeah, I love being able to be tangible. I don't like the fluffy stuff. And so I became a product manager, and then I got into product marketing from being a product manager and so on. So networking is what gives you that viewpoint into what's really out there and what that really means, because a lot of times business school case studies seem like you are the CEO and you're not going to start off as a CEO unless you start your own company. So be very, very mindful of that. The second one here is prepare. So once you've looked at your job descriptions, look at your resume. See whether your resume is not faking it. That's super important. Don't fake anything and just copy stuff from the job description. But does it talk about the buzzwords or the keywords that pipe up in terms of what that job is, and does your resume align with that? Does it speak about your skills in the right way? If it doesn't, then add those skills, add those opportunities, and when I say opportunity, meaning say that, hey, this is where I've done a little bit work on this and I'm really interested to do more or whatever, but be open, be transparent in your resume and make sure that it aligns with the job description. Big no-no here is do not apply with the same resume to a bunch of jobs. Never do that. It's so easily, it's so easily found out. Put some thought into your resume for every job. It's super important. It's going to help you understand whether you want that job or not, or it's something that's interesting to you or not. In that preparation, understand what your uniqueness is. And then sometimes the gaps that you have is your uniqueness. And what that means is, like how I was saying that engineering teams these days are taking more people with diverse backgrounds, non-engineering backgrounds into their teams. They are looking to come in to bring kind of like a refreshed perspective into how product gets built. So sometimes when you say, I actually don't have a lot of experience in databases, they'll be like, fantastic, that's exactly what we need, because we know that you can learn it. We know that you're passionate about learning it. So come on board and tell us what we're missing, because we've been staring at this thing for the last 10 years, things like that. So it's super important to be unique and be transparent. And that sometimes might be in the areas that you have your gaps in. So be very knowledgeable of that. And again, network. You will, share your resume with people. Once you have a mentor, don't just send it to someone, be like, hey, can you tell me? You need to have a relationship with that person before you start getting to that mode. But network and see what people are doing. See how they have crafted their career. See what got them to being product managers or product marketing managers and whatnot. Again, huge insight for preparation. Once you have done those two pieces, then I think you can start really targeting. Now, this is when you start looking at the culture of the company. Microsoft, so through your networking, through your research, you will get a sense of somewhat that Microsoft has a different culture from Google, from Facebook. Facebook has a different one from Amazon, and so on and so forth. Be very true with the culture. I know this is, once you get out of school, the first thing is like, I just need to get a job. Trust me, life hits you hard 3 months after you get your job if that culture doesn't suit you. So if you don't want to get stuck in that, be very mindful of the culture and see how you are communicating that preference of that culture in your resume. So I'll give you a very easy example. So at Amazon, they're all about customer first, all about customer first. You read their leadership principles, it's all customer first. Your resume should be customer first, if that's what you're going for, okay? If you're at Google, it's all about, quick, what is it called? Fail fast. It's all about fail fast. So, hey, experiment, fail fast, learn, move on. That's Google. You got to wash, rinse, repeat on that. If you fail, and you sulk, and then you need to take a vacation to get over your failure, and then this isn't going to work out. So that's Google's culture. Microsoft, there's a huge investment in people, meaning the growth mindset. You must have seen this in some text here and there. Growth mindset is basically being inclusive, being open to other ideas, not shutting someone off, being able to look at customers as yourself, having that customer empathy. These are all texts that highlight the culture at Microsoft, which is being able to put yourself in the customer's shoes. Again, having that empathy, having that growth mindset to constantly be learning, constantly be growing. And so, which is why it's so easy to move between roles at Microsoft, is that they think like, hey, if you're willing to learn something, we'll invest in you, So so again, think of those text words as that. And you will get a sense of this when you start speaking to people, and when you ask a simple question like, hey, so what's a day in your life like? What are your top priorities today? You will start seeing that essence of what the cultures of those companies in those conversations. So with that information, be very surgical, be very precise, and make sure that you include that text into your cover letter or your resume. And even when you are networking for a job, meaning you've had 6 or 7 times that you've met this person, and now they're getting a sense that, yeah, you might be a good fit, be very precise in using these words when you speak with this person. so that they understand that, yeah, this person could be a good culture fit. I will say like 7 out of 10 times someone gets rejected is because of culture fit. They usually have the skill sets. They usually have the right mindset to learn the skill sets, but the culture they lose out on, and then that doesn't help. So it's really important. And again, when you're targeting network, you're seeing this trend of networking that cuts across. So you'll figure out that's a really important thing to me. Finally, apply. And so when you apply, you can either apply online through the portal, or you can apply through a connection who would refer you into the internal system, and or you can, you might just be called for an interview just by having your resume in the system. So I will be transparent in saying that when you apply online for any of the big tech companies, be prepared to wait, right? I mean, it's not you're not the exception when it comes to like someone getting a call like the next day. It does not go into a black hole, but there are tons of resumes that get applied to. If you can, definitely network with someone in the company, understand them, let them understand you, prove to them that you would be a good culture fit and that you have the right chops for a job. They can then apply for you or apply you into the referral network, and then your odds become much less. Oh, sorry, your odds grow when it comes to landing the right opportunity, sorry. But what's even better than that, in my opinion, and this is what I like to do for people who I feel like have a great shot, great people, strong, learners and whatnot, is that I will directly send their resume to the hiring manager. So I will get their resume. I'll say like, hey, give me your job IDs, what you're interested in. We would have a conversation about it. I'd be like, yeah, this is not something that you'd be, I think, okay at. This is something what you'd be really good at because we've spoken so often and I know this is what brings you joy, sparks joy. And so it's like, okay, so what is it that in this role that would be interesting for you? Then I would refer that person online, and then I would shoot that resume over to that hiring manager straight up, being like, hey, this person, I know this person, we've had many conversations, great culture fit. That's the big part when an employee or when someone within the company sends a resume to a hiring manager, that basically says, I'm vouching for this person's culture fit. You can figure out the skills and whatnot. And again, like I would say like 7 out of 10 times, I will say this, 3 out of 10 times would a hiring manager say, no, Brian, this person doesn't have the right skill set. 7 out of 10 times the manager would come back saying that, yeah, I would love to keep this person on the books. The problem is right now we already have an interview loop going. Otherwise I would have totally interviewed this person, but I'll keep him on him or her on the docket for the next time we go around this. And so lo and behold, they do that. So very rarely would it ever come down to, I don't trust your culture fit. Like, dude, I work at the same company you do. Like, so that's why that helps a lot. And which is why, again, you will see this underlying theme I have across getting the job is networking. It's so important to network because that's how you really land those jobs. For the unicorns out there that apply online and get those interviews, stick to your job because that's awesome. But once you apply, make sure that you keep your advisors, your connections, the people up to date on like, hey, this is what's going on. This is what's happening. This is what I'm going to start learning a little bit more on. Keep that relationship going. And I'm confident that you'll definitely get the job that you're looking for if this is the job that you're looking for. Right?
Awesome. Thank you, Brian. We're just about at time here, so participants might be dropping off, but it's okay to hang out for a couple extra minutes, and you can finish up with your slides, and then we'll open it up to questions as well.
Yeah, sure thing.
If you have to drop off, we completely understand.
No, I can go over. I usually buffer time because it's good. So anyways, last couple of slides. So I put in some resources here that I thought were good. The last one here, Cracking the PM Interview, fabulous book. Please get it if you're interested in it. If you're interested in product management, it's a fabulous book to get you through the interview process. And then finally, so one of the reasons why I love doing this, and I reached out actually, and kudos to your career management team, by the way, to get all this set up really quickly. They did a fabulous job and really want you to succeed. Is that, we've all been where you're at. I've been in where you've at 5, 6.5 years, 7 years ago. So, the times are changing. the ways in which you network, the ways in which you get these kind of jobs, the jobs themselves are changing. And so I think it's important for new grads or college students to understand how do you really differentiate yourself and get out the door running. So, I'm happy to connect with folks if anyone's interested, but I hope this was useful. And yeah, that's it.
Awesome, thank you. Well, any participants have any questions at all? Go ahead and at this point, you can take yourself off mute or put it in the chat. We'll give a quick second here to hear that. Okay, yeah, just a couple of great sessions, and everybody appreciates your time, Brian. I'll ask one quick one if you don't mind. For the networking piece, it's such an integral part. We talk about it all the time. Unfortunately, sometimes it gets overlooked as well. Can you just give, maybe one quick networking tip or networking advice that has worked for you in the past?
Yeah, I usually, as I said, I usually do my my networking through LinkedIn, and before I send an invite or before I look at or before I reach out to someone, I usually try to find some common ground. You need some common ground, and that doesn't need to be like we worked in the same company or anything like that. It could be as simple as you both liking the same post on LinkedIn. I would be like, hey, I saw you like this post, and then I went into your profile and I saw that you've been doing this really cool work. And very rarely would anyone not want to talk about the like how cool they are. So, I would reach out like that. And again, it's not like 100% hit rate. It's I think it's maybe like a 65% hit rate where, where I would reach out to somebody like, yeah, happy to talk about what we're doing here. And it's the best thing about finding common ground is like the other person thinks and sees that, yeah, this person took some effort to even understand if there's, understand me or understand like how we can correlate or whatever. And definitely don't feel like you need to nurture every single relationship. I've met many people over the years. It's not in my bandwidth to nurture every relationship, but the ones that matter, I do. So find common ground. That's like my number one tip, because there are many times when you get emails and like there's nothing here. This looks like like a mail merge system that they sent me something.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, and I love that slide that you had the apply slide where network is part of every single piece, because there's no end to it, and there shouldn't be, because that's what you foster the relationship. And